Hey everyone, I'm Shatay.
I'm Scott, and we're the Hazes.
Welcome to the Love Haze, where we rethink the way that we love life.
And centered around this idea that there will always be a haze, but we can show up whole and healed anyway. So today, we're really going to be talking about how to forgive yourself when you're the person who's at fault.
Yikes.
And how you move forward from that point. So, for this topic, just kind of thinking about what happens when you're at fault, when I'm the one who did the damage. And I think the inspiration from this topic kind of came around thinking about how we've been exploring all these different things when kind of we're facing the world or dealing with interactions with other people and we kind of feel wronged at different times, like how we heal from injuries that have happened, almost external kind of stuff. And this is looking a little bit more at what happens when I'm at fault, when I've done something and I know better.
Yeah.
So for me, one of the hardest things for me to reconcile often is making a misstep or a mistake when I know that I know better, when I know that I should have made a different decision, and being able to deal with like the fallout from that. When I've made the error, when I've injured someone else, or I've done something to put myself in a predicament, and really having to address like, and I know for me what happens is that often I'll turn the gun on myself, right? I really go hard on myself about knowing that I knew better, about the way that I dealt with that situation and making a bad decision anyway. And I can really kind of withdraw and get into my feelings and really get down and out, just based on sometimes my own inability to forgive myself for actually being in the arena and making a bad decision. So how do you deal with it? What do you do when you are the one who's made the misstep or the mistake?
That's a really good question. And as you were talking, I was actually thinking about, sometimes we do intentionally like make a decision that we know is probably not for the best. But sometimes we offend people, hurt people without really intending to. Like we're not meaning to hurt someone's feelings. And I'm sitting here trying to think if the responses to those are different. Either way, it feels bad because nobody wants to hurt someone's feelings. I think there are some situations where you know that there is something to do, right? And you know that like the hard conversation you're going to have with someone could hurt their feelings, but you know it's for the best to have it anyways. So I guess what I'm saying is that there are levels of this that make it a little bit complicated, right? There's a difficult conversation that you have to have that's probably going to hurt somebody's feelings. You still have to say it anyways. They're hurt. You feel better, but you still feel bad that you hurt somebody. So there's like a level of forgiveness that has to take place for that. I think there's I know this is messed up. I'm going to have to, but I'm choosing this thing anyway. Like I'm choosing to eat all the slices of pizza, even though I know doggone well I don't eat all the pizzas. And like how I forgive myself from choosing the bread every single time when I know my advanced age won't necessarily be so quick to forgive me as my 15-year-old body did. And then there's I'm just living my life, having the best intentions, thinking I'm all is good, and then you're like, actually, here's a good example. We're driving through neighborhoods, we like look at houses, and we were in this neighborhood that circled around, and you didn't remember what the entrance looked like.
Right.
And we talk a lot of trash, and so we're leaving, and our trash talk, which is risky, right? We're talking trash like we always do, and the trash talk that I did that particular time triggered like you feeling like you couldn't remember the directions, and I was calling you like stupid or not smart enough, and that was not an intention. I was like just engaging the way that we always engage, right? So that's an example of like me feelings being hurt, and not having like intentions around it. For me, I guess after all of these words, to answer your question, it feels the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there is still hurt there. You still feel bad. I never want to hurt anybody's feelings. And the first and the third ones, you know, you feel misunderstood a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
right? Even though your intentions aren't aligned with the impact of it, like there is a, like, you're not getting me a little bit feeling
Mm-hmm.
of it. And then there's just kind of like a bruised ego, I guess,
Yes.
kind of that comes
Mm-hmm.
along with it. So I think it's like, it's complicated and you feel a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
It's really like, I guess what I would say.
I think for me, the one of the first things that happens is that I automatically get offended when it's another person that I'm dealing with and I've done the offense, right? So I automatically want to put on my shoulder pads and defend myself, like, how dare you not get me, right? I thought our relationship was better than that, right? I thought that you would understand. Like, don't you know at base, right, I have no ill intent.
Right. Don't you know
Right.
my heart?
Right. You know my heart. And so that portion of me wants to be like, okay, we have this baseline, so how could you be offended? Like, it wants to say, what's wrong with you then? Right? But then when the person kind of asserts that their feelings have been hurt or I've done something to misstep, then I'll turn the gun on myself and be like, well, you know, how did you not understand, or how did you get so comfortable that you didn't consider this other person?
I feel that too. Yep.
Yeah. So.
But for me, it's not like, how did I get so comfortable that I would offend them? It's like, how did I get so comfortable that I wasn't guarded more? For me, which is also not great, right? Because this idea of being vulnerable, letting your guard down, getting to know people, and when you do that, there will be some friction. You're gonna bump heads, and so it's like, if the tendency for me, because my defense mechanism is to shut down, right? I just shut all the way down. Part of that is so that I can process and understand how I'm feeling, but part of it is so that I won't feel that way again. And so it's like, how did I allow myself to like let my guard down enough to feel this way with this person? And it's not great. Like you say, your first response is to like be like, how dare you? And mine's kind of like, it's almost like a sadness for me. Like not an anger, just kind of like, it makes me sad. Like, why don't you know me? Like, why are we as close as I thought that we were? What am I doing wrong? Like, how did I, just kind of like all of this internal kind of like questioning that happens for me.
And then I think after I go through like my process or whatever, when I start to get to the heart of the matter, then what we are really asking for is, just on an elementary level, what we really want is we want the good without the bad, right?
Yeah.
We want engagement and we want relationship, and we don't want the speed bumps that will inevitably happen when you encounter another person's humanity. Yeah. And also when you have to face your own. Yeah. Right? And those things are you can't avoid that part of it. Yeah. Like if you want human relationship, any relationship, friendship, family, professional, whatever it is, you're not going to be able to avoid those little speed bumps, because if you're not going to be a recluse, then you're going to encounter those types of things. And I think that we enjoy and we celebrate like the good parts of it, but we want to avoid the rest of it. And one of the things that you said was like, I don't want to feel this way, right? And we don't want to feel that way. But I think a part of like the greatness of our humanity is being able to experience the entirety of that. And all of that shit sounds great in theory, but not when you're going through it. Not when you had made me mad in that neighborhood. Because here I am, driving us home from the gym, mind you. I'm tired. I'm hangry. Not hungry, I'm hangry. And this mug is like, hey, why don't we dip through this neighborhood real quick and look at these houses that we cannot afford in this moment, right? And then I get up in here and I'm just driving around. I'm thinking about how hungry and tired I am. And she's like, don't you remember how to get out of here? I remember how to get to our house on the straight road. How dare you be up in here talking about my driving skills and you relaxing?
It was not
I ain't
driving
here for
skills. It was not driving skills that I mentioned. It was, you didn't recognize the same thing when we entered the neighborhood that we're now passing again on the way out. That's all I was saying. All right.
I said what I said.
Okay, so you're the one that's at fault.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Does it matter if the offense hurts someone else versus you? Like, does the severity of the situation go up when, like, it's somebody else's feelings that have been hurt? Does it even matter at all? Is hurt just hurt?
I think there's levels to it. So I think when we hurt other people, number one, we don't always know right away.
Yeah.
When we've hurt somebody's feelings. So you have to go through like their entire process. Sometimes you will hurt and you will injure, and depending on the way that person processes, you may find out right then that you hurt their feelings,
Yeah.
or it may be a person who doesn't call you for 2 weeks and you don't know what's going on, and you find out later that you hurt their feelings behind something. And then you have to go through like dealing with it and how you feel about the hurt and the injury and that kind of stuff. And then there are those times when you do something to injure yourself or you hurt yourself and you feel it immediately, right? So there's levels to, I think, the external, the hurt that you give and you deal to other people, just depending on how that person processes and if they let you know right away.
Yeah.
But often when we hurt ourselves, we recognize it right away. We feel it right away.
Sometimes.
And we go about the business of trying to do something about it, no matter if that looks like isolation or it looks like I don't want to deal with this in the moment, or whatever you do to deal with when you're injured, right? It's there and it has happened. And for the most part, you're aware that you've done something to hurt yourself.
Yeah. I really like what you said about how long it takes the other person to process it and when they let you know. Because I don't know if it's not everyone, but it feels as though these days people aren't big on sharing what is wrong or like when you've offended them if it's not in anger. So somebody can, if you've pissed them off, they're quick to be like, let me tell you about yourself, or read you, as people say. But I don't have that many examples outside of family, like of people who are willing to have tough conversations and say, this thing that you did bothered me and it offended me. And even when I've tried to do that to other people, it hadn't always been received well. Like they like don't respond at all, right? Like don't want to talk about it. And you've taught me like, well, don't expect people to communicate the way that you do, right? So I would prefer to like address stuff head on. So if we can't talk it out, maybe we can write it out, text it out, something. But I would just say it would be helpful, like if you're interested in maintaining the relationship, to let people know when you've offended them so that it can be corrected. Do you know what I'm saying? So send a message in a bottle, send it by a dove, right? Like something, write it, call, text, type, skywrite. Like just let the person know that you've been offended, because then I've noticed that if you don't address it, like it's like pebbles that get stored away until one pebble is finally the one thing that breaks, like unleashes all of them, because you never addressed any of them to begin with.
Right.
And that's not to start like turning the conversation to the other person, but we're talking about being at fault. And I think a key part of knowing that you're at fault is for the other person to tell you and for y'all to have the conversation in a way that's not too emotionally charged, like not productive.
Well, and I think you can't really have that conversation, right, without dealing with the fact that everybody doesn't rock like that.
Yeah.
Like everybody doesn't have this resolve to where they are the type of people who like to talk it out and like to have difficult conversations. Some people just want to be out here living, right? And when things happen, I can discard that relationship because that person is not for me. And I think the overreaching thing or overarching thing is that we don't want to be people who do that with our relationships, who throw people away, when things don't go our way, or even have people throw us away.
Yeah.
Like, I would like to have a chance to resolve conflict, even if I don't know what that looks like for you. Even if so, I can deal with me with taking the L, right, and learning the lesson, and doing all these other things. But some of our relationships, or all of our relationships, are give and take.
Yeah.
But what we don't get to decide for other people is how they deal with injury. And I think what we can do is have some of those conversations and be able to say, like, I would like to talk this out with you. I would like to have a chance to resolve the conflict. And if I've misstepped, then have a chance to have my process, and maybe even include you in some of those conversations to be like, I'm sorry, you know, I misstepped, and I want things to be better. I don't want to be this person who, you know, puts a dagger in this friendship and now it's over. What if we learn to have these difficult conversations and learn to have some semblance of conflict resolution so that we can all move forward? But that doesn't mean that the other person is going to be invested in that. And I think the conversations that we're having at this moment is kind of what it feels like and what it looks like for us to come to a place to where I'm saying, hey, it was my fault. What can I do?
Yeah, that's another good point about what it looks like or feels like to have difficult conversations. So do you think, and I know this is, we don't want to generalize our whole community, but let's just say from your experience, from what you've witnessed, and friendships from all areas of life, phases of life, professional relationships, family relationships, do you feel like, again, from what you've experienced, that our community has a lot of like experience with having difficult conversations in a healthy way?
No. No.
Yeah.
And I mean,
why? What do you think that comes from?
Man, I think
slavery. Like slavery.
I think just unaddressed trauma.
Yes,
I
Lord.
think that we have like so much unaddressed trauma and like a history of not addressing trauma.
Yeah.
And I think that we're almost taught like some things you just gotta be with. Like, these things are gonna happen and you just move on.
Yeah.
Right? And nobody ever really talks about healing though. Like, we're so focused a lot of times on moving on or moving forward. We don't really talk about
Jesus heal it, and we're not doing anything about it.
Right. And so I think it comes with this understanding with this understanding that we need to unlearn a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Like, especially in our communities. And the unlearning comes with, like, I don't want to just move forward.
Yeah.
Right? I want to move forward as a whole and a healed person. Like, I want to address this thing that hurt me, this injury that happened, and I'm very much entitled to feel the way that I feel without being called a crybaby or a mama's boy or any of those things, right? Because I am a man, a black man. I am a human being who's entitled to experience the full gamut of emotions, right? And so even when the mistake is mine, then I need to be able to hear that there was this injury. And no matter how I feel about it in that moment, not just to make up for, but to do the healing work of being able to talk about, like, what led up to it, right? What happened before? Right. And when you do that internal, that kind of healing work, you can start to talk about, like, peeling back the layers of the onion and kind of really dealing with what is the thing that happened before the thing that happened before the thing that got us to that point. Right. And a lot of times we are so, like, we get taught basically just to, whatever you do, you make up for it and you move on, or you don't talk about that injury anymore and you move on. But the central point for us a lot of time is the moving on. And I would like for us to move that back to the central point for us and the main thing for us to be able to heal, right? And then look at moving forward and what we need to do to move forward, not just the moving on.
Because it's not moving on if you're not healed.
Correct.
It's just brushing past it. It's walking over it, but guaranteed the thing will continue to come up.
Mm-hmm.
So moving on in a way that the thing is released, that is healing. Moving on, not addressing it, brushing it under the table, not talking about it, like that's not moving on.
It's not real moving on.
No.
I think it's a lot of times what we've been taught that moving on looks like.
It's moving on with baggage.
It is. And what will happen is, right, what will happen is, you'll say, we moved on past that. We don't talk about that, right? But all that person got to do is one more thing, right? Show up at the family dinner late, right? Make one more misstep. And it may be that thing that causes me to flip tables, or it may be that thing for me to get you told and tell you about all the shit that you done that I remember that I never healed from, right? All the stuff that I say that I moved forward on, right? And that we okay now. It's all right. He's still coming around. Everything's cool. But I really didn't. You're just waiting on that person to misstep again, and you're waiting on their humanity to show up. Yeah. Because it's going to happen. Yeah. And then you're going to get them told. There's going to be a big fallout. And then we don't heal from that either. And we don't talk about that thing.
We don't talk for a little while, and then we just all of a sudden kicking it again. Like,
right, and then we just right back.
And I got time for that, y'all. We too grown out here.
We are.
And I think I've said it before on this, in one of our conversations at Seven Shooter said, everybody's grown until it's time to have a conversation. And I always go back to that because it's so true. But let's not keep talking about other people. We're talking about us today. All right?
And so with that, I wanna bring up this thing I saw Charlemagne post today. When we talk about, the internal work that we have to do and what we have to do to forgive ourselves, right? So what he posted was, and I'm gonna read this. It says, the relationship you have with yourself is the most complicated because you can't walk away from you, right? You have to forgive every mistake. You have to deal with every flaw. You have to find a way to love you even when you're disgusted with you.
Preach. That's real. That's real. And that's a really good way to segue into like our segment on what is the haze. We try to identify each session. What is the haze? And the haze really is that thing, acknowledging the error and forgiving yourself, as he says, even when you're disgusted with yourself. I know I mentioned the 4 agreements, maybe in like one of the previous episodes. And then he says in this book also that human beings are the only species that have to pay repeatedly for the same offense. Like other animals, and we know why, because they're animals, right? The thing happens once, say for instance, you have a dog, right? The dog's in trouble. Most dogs you can see when they're like embarrassed, nervous, like you can sense, right? They're ashamed, and then it's over. They're back to loving you again. They've moved on. We don't repeatedly keep making them pay for the same mistake. Human beings, we make ourselves pay for the same mistake over and over. We make other people pay for the mistake over and over. So the haze is could be acknowledging when we're wrong, when we've hurt someone. So actually just owning up to the offense can be a haze. Letting it go, healing it, moving forward, addressing it in a way that works for both people. So to your point, it can't just be addressing it in a way that works for me. Like maybe that person has to process it. And then having that difficult conversation so that hopefully you can address it and then stay in relationship with one another. What do you think?
I think that's all very much true. And I think the part of it that I have to reconcile frequently is when it's again not the other person, it's me, right? When I know better, and I think some of these things can really lead into what I see in my field and what I've experienced for myself with like going into like some semblance of a depression, with like making the same mistake over and over again, and then I think what really helped me grow was being able to have some semblance of grace for myself. Yeah. Right. For knowing that I am experiencing life and I'm growing and I'm asking to be in new soil and new territory in different stages of my life. And there are some things about me that are some character flaws that I'm really trying to let go of, and to try to find better ways to deal with. And even dealing with those things helps me to find grace for other people, because I have to find grace for myself sometimes. I have to give mercy to myself sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? I can't be this person that asks for grace for myself but then doesn't grant it to other people. But I also can't be a person that gives grace to other people and then doesn't have any for myself.
Yeah.
I can't give mercy to other people and then not have mercy for myself.
Yes.
Right? So often, especially for me, because I have all of this book knowledge and I'm well read and all these other things that people give me credit for, I sometimes feel like I don't have the space to make mistakes. And it can be so difficult and so challenging for me to forgive myself in those moments. Because Negro, you know better. Like, and what is it that you haven't read in this book that is causing you to continue to fail this test? And it makes me then reframe for myself what failure is, right? And start to understand what missteps are. And missteps and mistakes are not failure, right? It's a part of what life in and of itself is, right? It's a series of tests, right, that we're seeking and kind of try to find the answers to and to navigate around.
Yeah.
And sometimes we will misstep, and sometimes we will have to adjust the goals that we've set for ourselves and be able to move forward. Because what happens for me as a man, when I label something as a failure, then that means it's over, it's done, right? And if I see myself sometimes leaning towards failure, I ball the whole shit up and throw it away, right? But when I'm able to reframe and say that this is a part of what my life is going to look like as a whole, then I can say that, okay, I misstepped here. I need to take a step back. I need to make an adjustment to my goal, and I need to keep on chugging. I need to keep on moving about my business, because the ultimate goal is over here. And these things that I'm doing are just small steps to get to those goals. So I can give myself grace, and I can give myself mercy, and I can give myself these things that tell me that, hey, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because number one, you're in the arena. You're not sitting on the sideline,
You're
talking,
trying.
wishing, praying, all these other things, and just saying that those things are enough. Those things are not enough, because I have to have the works, right? If I have the faith, then I have to have the works. And I got to put something behind what it is that I've said that I want.
Yep.
So I can sit on the sideline and say, I'm going to wait till I'm ready. I'm going to wait till I have enough money to jump out there and move forward. I can get out there and I can do it, with the understanding that I'm probably going to misstep. I'm probably going to hurt somebody else's feelings, being so focused on my goals. I'm probably going to do something that's going to hurt my own feelings, my own self. And there's not going to be anybody to blame it on. And I'm going to have to figure this thing out. And it's really about being able to move forward for me in that moment and not give up. When normally I would be like, nope, I ain't doing it no more, I'm going home. So then, I know I just said a whole bunch of words. So let me ask you then, like, what are some ways that you feel like you can deal with situations when you're the at-fault party?
That's a good question. I think it's important to acknowledge it and to name it, right? It's important to know what the thing is. So if there's a feeling of sadness, anger, whatever it is, even if I've inflicted it upon myself or upon someone else, for me, this might not be the case for someone else. It's important for me to understand what the offense is. And sometimes we'll just talk about like if I've like offended myself or hurt myself or what I've done, the offenses to me. Sometimes I don't know what I'm feeling. It's just like a sense something's off, something's not right. I'm not sure what it is. So I have to spend time understanding what I'm feeling. I have to spend time understanding what the offense is. Once I'm able to name it, then I'm able to kind of like process next steps. And for me, it is always if it's to someone else, I always want to apologize. Like, I never want to move about the earth and have people feel like I'm being unkind to them or disrespectful to them or any of those things. So I always want to apologize. I think I'm always striving to be understood too, but I think that's something I need to try to grow out of, if I'm being honest, because everyone's not going to get me, and I think that's okay. So name it, acknowledge what it is, apologize to whomever I need to apologize to, even if it's myself. I do affirm myself as neither, right? So, like, I will say if I need to, like, it's okay, Shatay, you're enough, Shatay, I love you, Shatay. If I have to do that, if the situation calls for that, I will do those things. And then I always kind of look for the thing that I need to learn from it. So, like, the thing that I need to make the adjustment around, because it's not, when you repent or ask for forgiveness, it's not really repentance if the behavior doesn't change. And so if it's like something that I need to correct, then I have to spend time, like, figuring out, like, what's the adjustment I need to make so that I'm not, you know, eating all the pizza, or, you know, talking about, you know, your directions. Like, what's the adjustment that I need to make so that I can move forward, and then that there is, like, peace within myself, and then peace with whoever I offended. What about you?
I think being able to, if I've hurt someone else, I really want to know what I did. I want to be able to just really, like, simplistically ask, like, what I do, you know? And I think also just an immediate, like, that wasn't my intent. And I have to be sure that I don't go into this long, wordy diatribe, right? And I really just take the opportunity to be like, I'm sorry. Because, you know, it don't have to be all these words. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Miss Jackson.
Right. And I am for real. But, you know, and for me, things kind of always go back to, like, at the baseline of who we are in relationship, right? I don't want to hurt you ever. And if I did, then I'm sorry. But also there's this kind of processing that has to happen for me. Like, okay, so what did I lose? What did I learn?
That's interesting.
And what I have to do in order to move forward. So under what did I lose, it may be like some level of trust, right? For the other person. They may feel like, okay, well, I can't trust you with my stuff because in this moment you cracked a joke about something that's really, you know, a hurt place for me that maybe I'm not all the way healed from, and I trusted you with that information, and here you go bringing it up, right? And so then what did I learn? What I learned was I need to be more careful, right, about the way that I love and the way that I, especially with as much as I laugh and I joke and all those things, I need to be a lot more careful with my words and what I need to do in order to move forward. You know, I just have to, you know, figure out a way to affirm the person that I'm with, right? And I also have to figure out a way to affirm me. Even like you said, like, I'm enough in this situation, because a lot of times, and I think a part of what we haven't talked about is what happens to us internally sometimes when we injure this person that we care about so much. So one of the most difficult things for me to address when I originally went to therapy was like the fact that I had hurt this person that I cared about so much. And like knowing that I was like this great man, right? And this feeling that I was a really good friend, a really good man, and I hurt this person that I care so much about. And I don't even know how I did that. So, and how dare me, right? So I try not to have standards for other people that I don't have for myself. So I had this how dare me attitude, right? How dare you hurt this person that you claim that you care about so much? Because when you care about a person, then it doesn't look like hurt, right? But, and then also making room for my own humanity, which is sometimes selfish, which sometimes believes that I'm above reproach and all these other things, right? And being able to walk in a space where I am a habitual student. And I'm always learning and I'm always growing and I'm always getting better and having a teachable spirit. So
I love that. I actually just learned something from you today on like a formula, right? Like the loss the learn and the moving forward is a really good way. You're such a professional. It's a really good way to package that up real nicely with a bow for people who need a way to like process through the thing, right?
I'm very concrete.
Sometimes you can have all of these feelings, these thoughts, and not really know what to do with them. And that's why some people journal. That's why some people talk to a therapist. That's why some people talk to a friend. But that's a really nice way to kind of like help you review the situation in a practical way for forward movement. I like that. So do you have any tips for how you forgive yourself? Like what does that look like, forgiving yourself?
I think forgiving ourselves a lot of times for me centers around just being able to do the process, being able to like work through it. And for me, it should be an immediate thing with being able to affirm for yourself that you're worthy of forgiveness, right? That you are living life, that you are having a human experience, right? And that you're not expected to be above having these situations happen to you while you're having a human experience, right? You're not any all-knowing person who is above making mistakes, right? And at the very minimum, I forgive myself for doing what I did, right? But also, coupled with that is, what can I do to heal, right? So the moving on part involves, it's all encompassing, right? Like I forgive myself for the mistake. I want to do the work to have this other person forgive me, even if it's myself that I have to get the forgiveness from. And a part of that is then dealing with the ugly part of it. Like, what happened? How did it hurt? What did I learn? What did I lose? That type of stuff.
Yeah.
And being able to move forward there. That's how I move on. Being able to get to the nitty gritty and do that dirty part of the work.
Yeah, I think one thing that helps me is I know I've heard Iyanla say it before, and I can't remember where I heard it first, but the idea that everybody's doing the best that they can at any given point.
Yes.
So every given moment, even if the person knows better and they're not doing better, and that includes me, that's the best that I can do at this moment. And when I can do better, typically people do better. So it's the idea that everybody is doing the best that they can at any given point. And there's this idea of forgiving yourself for not doing the things that you didn't know how to do or didn't have the capacity to do at that point. And so it's just like the idea of, you say, like, having grace for yourself. Self-compassion is another way that people say it. So it's just
mercy.
Exactly, mercy. So it's just saying to myself, like, you're doing the best that you could at that time. I forgive you for not knowing better. Should say. I forgive you, for doing what you could then. Now that I know better, I do better. So sometimes it's a constant reminder of that. When the situation is, bigger than me offending you, like when you're hangry. But like if it were like a huge offense and it caused a rift or a break, right, a fracture in the relationship, then it's like sometimes I have to revisit, like, because I'm, the enemy is the accuser of the brethren. So in your mind, you're replaying, at least for me, I'll replay an offense over and over and over, right? I'm in my head about it a whole bunch. And so sometimes it's me repeatedly, like on a number of days, months, however long it takes, saying like, you got to let that go. Like, you did the best that you could. I forgive you for not knowing better at that time. So I think it's a process sometimes.
Also, I think sometimes what works really well for me is to be able to, like, see, like, the good that's in it. Like, to be able to step outside when I'm in healing mode and trying to figure out how to heal the injury. Like, to look at the good things that were there.
Yeah, but sometimes the good things don't overshadow the hurt that is there.
No.
So.
No, and it's not even an overshadowing kind of thing for me. It's like those things that I know that when I try again, those things are still there.
Mhm.
Like, I still have this opportunity to be in a relationship, right? I still have this opportunity to be in this car with this person that I care about, and being able to do this thing, and to have new adventures, and this kind of thing. And I might have to bring back MapQuest to go somewhere with her, but I'm still grateful for the relationship. But no, just being able to see the good, right? So these things that are somewhat consistent, that we do have already figured out.
Yeah.
Like, at least I have this much. Like, I'm not starting from zero with nothing, right? I have this relationship with this woman that I really care about, who really cares about me, and we're able to go to the gym together and work out, and we're able to do these other things, like, with the spirit of togetherness.
Yeah.
And I could not have that, right? So to be able to, as the old folks say, count it all joy, right? To be able to kind of have some ability to be able to count the things that are wins, right? And be able to go in and then make this little tweak, right? And then move forward. That is helpful for me.
All right. So, music for the moment. What you got? What does this feel like to you?
So, BJ the Chicago Kid has this song that I used to play over and over and over again, especially when I get up in my feelings. I'll put myself in a room somewhere in the dark and play his song called Falling on My Face. And it's just like, I like sad songs. I like songs for the moment. Like, so when I'm sad, and this song is just talking about how I can't stop falling on my face. Like, I'm trying. I thought I had gotten past this thing, but even I'm out here, but I just keep falling on my face. I keep doing the wrong thing. But it's a celebration of, like, continuing to try, right? And it can bring you some sadness, and sometimes for me, I just need to cry it out. Especially as a man, I need to go in my space, in my cave, and I need to cry it out, right? And it's cleansing for me. And just acknowledge that I'm out here and I'm trying, and I don't even mind continuing to fall on my face over and over again. But that's my jam. BJ's a Chicago Kid. He gets down. Check it out.
Check it out.
Servants and kings have all felt this pain. By now I should be sick of falling on my face.
So we always like to leave you a little something that you can take away. Resource, podcast, video, sermon, something to help you grapple with the topic that we've discussed on your own time, in your own space. So what do you have for us today?
So our resource for today is this poem that I had to learn when I was pledging, called Equipment by Edgar A. Guest. And it just really asserts that we have all the equipment that we need in order to heal and be whole inside of us and to do the work that needs to be done. And so a part or an excerpt from that poem is that courage must come from the soul within. The man must furnish the will to win. So figure it out for yourself, my lad. You were born with all the great have had. With your equipment, they all began. Get hold of yourself and say, I can. It's just about doing the work that you need to do. You have everything that you need inside of you to keep pushing forward and to do what you need to do.
So as always, we appreciate y'all for rocking with us, having these conversations about life and living out loud, loving out loud. So thank you for joining us today. We are the Hazes. And until next time, we'd like to challenge you to rethink the way that you love your life.
Yes, sir. We appreciate y'all for rocking with us. Peace.
Holla.
Why'd you take so long to come through? Oh, baby. And